Hello, everyone. Welcome to the last day of the industry conference. I hope you've been enjoying it so far. Yes? No? What do you think? Okay. If you don't know already, I've done a lot of these, but my name is Jeff McNunn, and I'm the Senior Director of Industry and Theatrical here at TIFF, as well as the Programmer of Prime Time. It's a pleasure to introduce our next session, Dialogues with Directors Guy Maddin and Matthew Rankin. Woo! Guy and Matthew will discuss their latest projects, the influence of Winnipeg's anti-mainstream film scene, and its enduring influence on their work and the Canadian independent film scene at large. Just a heads up, Guy's Rumours will be screening at 4:30 p.m. today at Scotia Theatre, and Matthew's Universal Language will have its North American premiere at 9:30 p.m. this evening at TIFF Lightbox. Our programming is made possible by all of our sponsors and partners. A sincere thank you to presenting sponsor Rogers, our major sponsors RBC and Visa, our major industry supporters Ontario Creates and Telefilm Canada, as well as our media partner Variety for supporting all of our dialogue sessions throughout our entire conference so far. Guiding us through this conversation is Kelly Boutsalis, TIFF's Associate Programmer, International and Canadian Features. Please join me in welcoming to the stage Guy, Matthew, and Kelly.
Hello, everyone. I don't think that I need to go through the IMDb list of both, unless you would like me to.
It's going to be goofs section.
Just the trivia and the goof?
The continuity goofs. There's always someone calling you out on those.
Well, I found it to be an interesting choice to ask me to be the moderator, as I have never been to Winnipeg. But I have journeyed to interesting Winnipegs through the both of you. Did you ever realize that you would be the view that some people would look at Winnipeg through?
I felt I was doing people a favor. I was showing them Winnipeg without them having to, almost as a warning. Save them the trip, you know. But then Matthews seems to be up to something else, because that's the Winnipeg I want to live in, you know. Mm-hmm. Not my Winnipeg.
Matthew?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, you know, the Winnipeg we see on screen is overwhelmingly either ruin porn or like cozy Christmas time movies. Winnipeg, as we know, is one of the great, you know, contributors to the Hallmark movement in Canadian art.
That's all. You can't get around. You know, most people, like, ever since times of Ovid and his traffic congestion poems, summer construction has been infuriating people, but in Winnipeg it's because Christmas movies are being made in July, yeah. and big polyester white blankets are being rolled all over the place, and
rogue Santa's getting drunk.
Yeah. So yeah, that's the real Winnipeg that's out there in the cinema world. But.
And then we just had a moment backstage where I learned that you two have rarely spoken in public together, rarely in private, but there's a connection between your father and you, Guy.
Yes, I am so ancient that his father, Laird, a very lovely pupil of mine, was a student of mine when I started teaching at the University of Manitoba in the mid-90s. Yeah, and great guy. And he actually, I had so much respect for him because I started out before film in just university community theater, and my longtime friend George Tolles and Andrew Coyne, yes, the political pundit, and I wrote a comedy review in 1980 that Laird panned for the Winnipeg Free Press, and very deservedly so. George and Andy were outraged, and I was going, I know Laird's right. And,
yeah, I think I remember asking him about that, and he was like, I don't know, very shamefaced, and, you know, yeah, he was like...
No, it stunk. It stunk. He was right, and thus began a friendship that's now into its second generation.
Yeah, well, I think the last time we actually talked together, Guy, was in the Wagon Wheel restaurant. Do you remember?
Yeah, which just no longer exists.
Yeah.
All right, we understand the demographic here now.
But I remember you didn't eat your coleslaw, and the waitress gave you, said, why aren't you eating that? And you said, there's too many vitamins in it.
I get my vitamins from whiskey sours, thank you.
Oh, wow. Okay, so so your film premiered last night in the
Yes.
Royal Alex. And how did you feel the reception was for a Canadian audience?
I honestly didn't know what to expect. I said this last night, so if anyone was there, forgive me for repeating myself, but I just didn't know. The reception in Cannes was surprising. Yeah, I didn't even know what we had made, whether it was funny or dramatic or dreamy or none of the above, which is a worst case scenario. But the audience there seemed pretty engaged. But last night, the audience was, I felt like I'd made the Rocky Horror Picture Show or something like that. You know, the energy in the room was very good, and I'm even more needy for sort of stand-up comic attention now. It was really bad for me, but it went over really well. The place is, I guess, an old gilt theater palace that probably predates cinema even. It's gorgeous. And what it lacks in acoustics, lost some of the dialogue there. It more than made up for in the energy of vaudeville or something like that. I felt really good after.
Great. And you said at that Q&A last night that you don't really like to be pigeonholed into what sort of genre that you're making.
Right.
And do you also feel that way, Matthew?
Yeah, I mean, I have, big cinematic appetites. I've done a lot of animation, I've done some documentary, I've done, some fiction, the new piece is, it's in Farsi, it's a sort of a declaration of love to Iranian cinema, and like any love letter, you send it and you hope the person who receives it will find you to be enchanting and beautiful and accept you for all of your flaws and inadequacies and mistakes. But there's also the chance that the person who receives it will reject you and send you hate mail. So we'll see how it goes. But it's a new form, and it was a very beautiful experience to make with my collaborators who are all here, and so it's a new piece. It's a new form for us.
Right.
It's I wanted to believe that I would love the movie, but I was just wondering how Matthew would pull off this strange hybrid of Winnipeg love letter, all in Persian, and like reimagining a Winnipeg as a Persian city. And on a modest budget, I assume. I don't know. It's like not $100 million anyway. And I don't know. It works. The hybrid is so unlikely that it's the best since like bacon and peanut butter or something like that. It's just it really works somehow. Just that I don't know, the defamiliarizing a city that I'm all too familiar with. I've had my grave backhoed open there already, and but just seeing it is very dreamlike. It really gets airborne in ways that I never expected. I'm getting goosebumps just describing it right now, and I only watched it on a laptop. I can't imagine the big screen experience. It would just be so immersive. The mixture of tones, the way Matthew, who stars in it, was he's the protagonist of one of the three main stories in it. And it's so, but without being any sort of, without even a trace of narcissistic presence somehow. I think the first 15 minutes of your screen time is in a very wide shot with your head mostly turned away from the camera. It's just a very quiet, I guess that's the Iranian influence, whereas, my Winnipeg is me narrating it, and, everything. I must use the first person singular about 1 million times in there. I haven't had the nerve to count it, and I don't know, it's just such an, well, we're getting ahead. I'm sure I'm ruining your question number 37 now or something like that.
I expected that it would just go in directions, this conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, so I don't know if you wanted to elaborate then on the not wanting to be pigeonholed. Like, people keep trying to say what sort of films you're making.
Well, I think it's been, when I started so many years ago, every now and then someone in the industry would say, or a journalist would say, your films are impossible to classify, and I'd go, thank you. But they'd say, but then I realized that's really bad for your career. That it's nice if you make a single genre picture. But I started out wanting to be a writer instead of a filmmaker, and novels can be many things at once. At least in the 80s when I started, my experience with novels and film was that film tended to be a genre, and then novels could be many things. They had the space to be many things. And I just decided that I wanted to make movies that were many things. And I guess the thing that probably held me back the most was that I didn't have, I shot in black and white. I didn't know how to focus the camera. And I never had movie stars, and I don't know, just so many alienating, distancing effects. But the most recent thing is just another Guy Maddin movie in many ways, but it's in color, in focus. Got a movie star. I've got my cinematographer is here, Stefan Chupek, and in the front row there. It was nice just to, normally I used to shoot my own movies in many cases. It was nice just to hand it over to someone who knew what he was doing. I made this movie, Saddest Music in the World, 21 years ago, and had massive sets built. I know Carl Dreyer did this for The Passion of Joan of Arc. He had massive sets built and then shot the entire movie in close-ups. Can't see the sets. And that's what I did, but that's just because I didn't know how to shoot wide, or I didn't know how to light wide and things like that. But Stefan, this script is set in a massive forest, and we needed to have 7 people who were spread out, lit, and in interesting ways. And Stefan had done some forest work for Lars von Trier, and his work is spectacular, so I knew I was in good hands, and so I did the thing that I hate to do, and that's not touch a camera. And but it felt great. I was in great hands, and his camera operator is brilliant too. So his camera operator, you try telling him, they've been working together for a long time. You try telling him exactly what you want, and he goes, no, just tell me the feeling you want, and he's good. So he gives me the feeling I want in ways that I could never have done. So I feel good. I love collaborating with people who are good.
I did want to talk about. I did want to talk about that collaboration. You work with Evan Johnson, Galen Johnson, and you also have close collaborators. I believe I met Ilya earlier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ila is here.
Ila.
Yeah. Costume designer Negar Nematiasi in the front row, and production designer Luisa Shabas.
Yes. They do fabulous work, and I'm outnumbered today, but yeah.
So can you talk about that collaboration? What moves you to work with other talented people, and does that take the pressure off?
Yeah, I mean, that's what I love about filmmaking, is the collaborative nature of it. I'm not one of these, fulminating directors in a Napoleon hat who, has issuing edicts like the Emir of Qatar. I don't really like that. I don't think that's really fun. And what I really like is, to do the casting really well. I mean, the actors and also the crew, and ideally, everyone you work with is expressing themselves through the prism of the thing we're making together, and then it becomes a really beautiful thing. It becomes alive,
Yeah, and I've learned that if you just cast right, that fixes so much. They'll take a line on the page and literally make it breathe. And that even goes for when I was casting people off the sidewalk in Winnipeg. If it was just the right person somehow, they brought it to that species of life my earlier movies had when they had life. And but I was especially appreciative of the film. In a way, watching your movie with an audience for the first time is like watching your movie for the first time. And so last night I watched it for the second time, and I was appreciating more and more the little things that I hadn't even noticed while we were shooting that actors were bringing, that Stefan was bringing to the movie. So it's nice that it's still sinking in, and that I appreciate it more every day. It's a great feeling. Before, it was always a matter of me forgiving my mistakes in a movie when I made movies more by myself. It was more a matter of forgiving myself. At least I do forgive myself far more quickly than I forgive other people. So it's an easier process, but no, I love it. I love it when people have the right temperament for me, because I'm oversensitive and needs to be babied. But I love it when they have my taste but are just better at it. It's like the fulfillment of a dream. I wish I was a really good editor, or something. But so you just get a really good editor, but who helps you make your movie.
And I'd love to talk about casting. You have an incredible cast. Both of you have an incredible cast from very different worlds. So can you tell me about how you found the cast for both of your films here at the festival?
Sure. Do you want to go first, Matthew?
Yeah, sure. We really just cast. I made this film with my best friends, and we really just cast our friends. Overwhelmingly, it was just my friends' parents, and it was overwhelmingly non-professional actors, but people who nonetheless can perform. I think, we can all think of people who are around us who aren't necessarily actors by profession, but they're performers. They have a sense of timing. They can tell a story, and they have sort of a vibe about them, which, you can put them in front of a camera and they'll be able to do it, And even the script was kind of adjusted to the people we met a lot of the times, and that was really great. It was a really beautiful, fulfilling experience, and it again, we sort of wanted to keep everything very, very open. We have this one scene in the film where one of the characters sings. There's this turkey monger who just spontaneously begins singing to his butchered turkeys near the end of the film, and that was something that wasn't even in the script. The actor came to us on the day and was like, "I had this idea that maybe he sings to the turkeys."
Oh, it's
Yeah.
great. Great moment.
Yeah, I know, it's sort of one of those things. So we were like, "Yes, let's do it." So anyway, he just sort of. At the end of that day, we had no clue about where it was going to go in the script, but then editor Shi Feng and we found a spot for it. Now I can't really imagine the movie without it. So it's
No,
it's
and
one
I
of
can
those.
dial down my jealousy a bit, knowing that he thought of it, not you, because I was wondering, how did he think to write that in at that moment? Because it's so alive with surprises at all times. And I don't want to single out any one person, but I will anyway. But no, the cast is incredible in your film. It's beautiful from start to finish. But there's that Quebecois bureaucrat.
Yeah.
That wide shot where you're cutting back and forth along a 180-degree axis, like really strange editing. It's really formally strong and weird. But that guy, it's just.
It's in fact a woman in drag.
Yeah, right.
It's Danielle Fichot who plays. There's a really strange Quebecois movie about the life of Céline Dion. It's a French movie, in fact, called Aline. And
Right.
Danielle Fichot plays Aline's mother. With Céline.
She's remarkable. Like it's a real, like there isn't much scene stealing in the movie. It's really beautiful all the way through. But that scene is like, what the hell? It's incredible. It reminds me a bit of like a Jean Vigo character or something like that, like a schoolmaster in Zero de Conduite or something like that. Really, really beautiful.
It's amazing how in drag she looks almost exactly like Rémi Girard.
The drag thing works. I wasn't sure. I was going to say person instead of guy, but the just slight defamiliarization Well, defamiliarization is kind of the key word I think of in this. To watch the city I know so well. I often think that the inside jokes in the movie, you not only have to be from Winnipeg, but you have to be a certain age range and from a certain neighborhood in Winnipeg almost to get these things. But then I'm reminded of, say, Irish. One of my favorite writers is Flann O'Brien, an Irish guy who writes about a very specific time and place in Ireland, and the details in there must be like the details in your film, very specifically meant for Winnipeggers, but being a non-Irishman, I'm reading them and it just deepens and enriches the mystery and beauty, and it makes the place really exist. But defamiliarizing everything by just filling this city, which when I was a kid was full of Anglophiles, just WASPs and old Ukrainians, and all of a sudden it's Persian, and it just gets airborne right away because it's like a dream in which you've just eaten the right amount, or the right too much amount of Persian food and gone to sleep and dreamt of your hometown or something like that. But the defamiliarization makes specific detail shifts. It lifts them up into a relief that makes you realize, the Brookside Cemetery you visit has been relocated under a freeway ramp or whatever, and it just makes so much sense. Like you're just sort of wondering what the next scene, where it'll be. The Louis Riel monument or grave, we all know where it is in Winnipeg, but you've relocated it as well and redesigned it.
Parking lot. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just everything has been pried up with an enchanted crowbar and put somewhere else, and the effect is incredible. And I know for a fact it works on people who have no intention, God bless them, of ever going to Winnipeg. So, yeah.
And then there were also children. Like one of the threads of the film were the children, the tour guide, and then your own story. So can you talk about working with that? Those kids were incredible.
They're fantastic. Yeah, they're all really great. I mean, there's nothing more charming than a precocious child.
Yeah.
And we met 3 precocious kids, and we reached out to like a local Persian language school in Montreal, and they all kind of emerged through that. And we kind of rewrote the characters for these kids that we met because they all had very strong personalities. And yeah, they're all really great. Rojina Ismaili and Saba Vahed Yousefi and Soban Javadi. They will be with us tonight, in fact, so people will have a chance to meet them. Yeah.
Yeah, I hope they're thrilled. One of their characters is named Negan, which is, I'm assuming, an homage to a dear friend that we both had, Louis Negan. He's in a lot of our movies. That's the biggest thing we have in common, probably,
Yeah.
Louis Negan. He's no longer with us, but we're both committed to keeping him alive, evidently.
Yeah. Did you catch the Louis cameos in the movie, Guy?
I don't know how many there were, but I spotted a number. Yeah, they're beautiful.
Yeah, this is Louis' tie, actually. I'm wearing this exuberant Louis Negan tie today.
Yeah, that's his most sedate tie.
That's right, yeah.
I've been left. He wanted, one of his dying wishes was that I get this, a portrait of him that's about the size of this screen.
Yeah.
But luckily I have a bare wall in my bedroom and a big Louis Negan face
leering over
going to be presiding over my bed. Where, sorry Louis, nothing happens. One of the horniest nonagenarians on the face of the earth ever. Fantastic man.
Yeah, whenever I'd be with Louis and people would ask, "Oh, where did you meet?" He'd always say, "Oh, I think we met in the bathhouse."
Yes, exactly. Yeah. I just looked down and there he was. Yeah.
I started out by asking about the children, and one of the children wears a mustache as an homage to Groucho Marx. And is there some sort of story that you have?
Oh yeah, I was a very annoying little child. Guy, I think I actually met you, Guy, when I was like 13 or 14.
Is that right?
Yeah. And Thora Cook of the, you remember of the Western
course.
Canada Photographic Index?
Yeah, I used to work at a photo archive.
Yeah.
And
Anyway,
she ran it.
Yeah. Anyway, she somehow had a extra poster of Careful, and anyway, she gave it to me, and I got you to sign it. I don't know if you remember that moment, but as I still have it. It's really sweet. I love that movie. Anyway, I was this very annoying little child, and I was really obsessed with the Marx Brothers. Dave Barber used to show old Groucho movies at the Cinematheque, and I was obsessed with Groucho, and my parents, for some reason, encouraged this, and I became like really fixated on. Every morning with my mother's eyebrow pencil, I would draw a mustache and eyebrows on my face and go to school like that. And they even let me have like a cigar, which is really kind of strange.
Just
Anyway.
maybe if we give him a cigar, he'll settle down. He'll quit the Groucho duck walk.
Yeah.
Back.
I know. Yeah, it was so, and again, my teachers were just unbelievably irritated by this. They just hated me, and they unleashed a fleet of child psychologists to just beat this out of me. And but anyway, there's a little tribute to that moment in the movie. There's a very charming performance from a kid in Groucho drag.
It did feel like autobiography. I thought, beginning to understand Matthew a bit more. Yeah.
And Guy, could you please talk about casting all of the G7 leaders in...
Well, this is crazy. It's the opposite approach to what Matthew did and definitely way different than what I used to do. I wish I had as many good friends as Matthew did, but I would at least there's always people who want to be in a movie, but I used to just cast locally and stuff, but this time I'm getting movie stars, for crying out loud, and the part, Roy Dupuis had been, I guess, the closest thing to a lead in our mass sprawling Forbidden Room from 2015, and so we wrote a part for him with him in mind, and no one else could have played that role, I swear. The role had to be filled by a Canadian because of telefilm rules and all sorts of funding rules that I have no complaints about. So like and Roy Dupuis turned us down after he'd written it for us, and we were thinking like, do we have to, I don't want to use Ryan Gosling, not that he would even return my call anyway, but even if by some miracle, it's one of these other, Ryan Reynolds or something. They're wonderful actors, but we wrote the part for Roy Dupuis, and it just would have been different. So we just sat around in a state of sadness for a few days, and then, but Roy said that he'd had a dream in which he'd slept with a bog mummy, and that the script had started to seep into him a little bit, and he phoned me back 5 days later and said if it wasn't too late, he'd like to do it. So we were happy. And then one of my producers is Ari Aster, another great guy, the American wunderkind filmmaker who made me feel old in the best possible way. He reached out to me one day to tell me that when he was a little kid, I was his favorite filmmaker, and could he help me now? And so he helped get this project off the ground, and he knew Kate Blanchett's phone number, and around that time, Kate had been caught in the Criterion closet mentioning that she liked My Winnipeg, and I had gone down to narrate My Winnipeg in Sydney in 2008, and she was on the jury then, so she knew of me, and that was not everyone does. I'm well known in nooks and crannies, and then just totally anonymous in the rest of the sensible world, and so Ari gave me her phone number, and we just talked on the phone for, I remember, 61 minutes. The first 60 minutes, we just talked about other stuff, and then the last minute, she said, "I'll do the movie. Get your people to call my people," or whatever, et cetera, and that was it. And then once you have a name like Kate attached, all of a sudden agents return your calls, they return your emails, and so we just filled out our dream cast and just got everybody we wanted after that, from top to bottom.
Incredible.
So, yeah.
Alicia Vikander, you had... And also, you had, I know people ask you about Charles Dance keeping his British accent for the American president, but you have Kate Blanchett playing the German chancellor.
Right. Almost everybody in the movie just plays the leader of the country the actor actually hails from, with the exception of Charles Dance, who is the most British person on the planet, playing, without changing his accent at all, the American president. And then Kate is the only one that had to perfect such as whatever kind of perfection is required by a movie like this, but work on a German accent to play the German chancellor. And that was a cause for concern because Kate's a great actor, but it's hard to tell the exact tone that the movie wants. And an accent can be anywhere between an SNL skit accent and one, a Meryl Streep, where she learned Polish to act in a movie, that sort of thing. And so it caused some fear, and I was intimidated by Kate for the first 11 months I knew her anyway, and so I'd be scared to say, maybe dial it down a little bit, so I tried indirect ways, passive-aggressive ways to manipulate her accent. I'd start ordering food in restaurants with her in various German accents, degrees, really mild ones and broad ones, so she would see how that was far too broad. I don't know, whatever, so it was hard. Finally, we just had a direct sort of director-to-actor conversation, and she dialed it down, and the trouble is, the bigger her accent, the more detailed and funny her performance was, so it was really tempting to keep it a certain way. But she had a roommate, her best friend, Bina Degler, was also the costume designer, and she has this German accent. And Kate is so skilled, she just ended up sounding exactly like Bina Degler by the time the cameras were rolling. And I've even heard from people that Bina Degler's German accent is implausible. But it's the only, it's her accent. But whatever it is, it's great, and she worked hard on it, I guess. I don't know. It's hard to tell how hard Kate works because I just get into her when I'm watching, and then I realize, no, that's her job, is to do this. And it's funny, when you're working in post on a movie, you no longer are talking to the actors that were in your movie, except you, because they're your friends, but you just know them from the limited amount of footage, and you begin to think that's who they are. And so when I speak to Kate and she has her Australian accent, I'm very puzzled. Are there two of you or something? Yeah.
And a lot of people have called Rumours your most accessible film yet. There's a giant brain in it. There are bog people. I want to know, did you ever think, is this too far? Do I have to dial it back? Or did you go, this is as accessible?
Discussed, in the writer's room, we discussed whether, we'd often, you don't want a movie to be two things or three things. You want it to be a thing. And we wondered, well, maybe it should just be the G7 being lost in the forest with no giant brain and no bog people. So we discussed that. But then we're so acquisitive, and we just wanted it to have more genres stirred in. So it's got horror elements and weird fiction elements, and you just ultimately have to go by gut instinct. And so some people might check out of the movie once the giant brain shows up. But I don't know. I'm really glad, and the production design team came up with a pretty good giant brain for us. It wasn't one of those Spinal Tap Stonehenge moments, that I'm used to in film, where the giant brain shows up and it's the size of a walnut or something like that. No, it was exactly the size that we asked for, and it had beautiful texture, and I don't know, it was good. But as a script idea, I don't know, it remains to be seen. I'm happy it's in there.
I'm happy too. It was on the red carpet last night, wasn't it?
Yeah, the giant brain made a little, it was nervous, I noticed. It was sweating. It's really icky to touch. I was posing for pictures with it, and it was yeah.
Okay, so Matthew, I haven't mentioned that Universal Language is named as Canada's official entry for Best International Feature Film Consideration at the Oscars. So congratulations.
Yes.
How do you feel about that for this film?
I mean, it's very discombobulating, I come from subhuman trench underneath Winnipeg, you know? I mean, it's really strange. It's really bizarre to be evaluated on that level, you know? But, I mean, insofar as it's a measure of how the film is connecting, that's really beautiful. It's really beautiful for the crew and everything. And so, I mean, it's very humbling and, yeah. But, I mean, Guy, we are, you know, when I think of Winnipeg, like I mean, you know, when I went back to Winnipeg to start out, it was really like I took a vow of poverty. I lived in, you know, a shack in Chinatown, and it makes me think of, you know, the. Do you remember the Susan Sarandon's earring story?
Yes.
Yeah, it's like a Noam Gonic plot.
Yeah.
But I really want to share it.
Yeah, please
we have
do.
some Noam Gonic fans. Yeah.
This needs to be shared. If you weren't going to, I would.
But yeah, we'll tag team because maybe, you know, it's one of those like apocryphal stories. But when I lived in Winnipeg, I lived in a huge like mansion in Chinatown, and I shared it with two other people, and it cost $300. So you can imagine what kind of, I think Winnipeg was the murder capital of Canada at that time, and all the murders happened on our street.
Yeah.
And at that same time, Susan Sarandon was in Winnipeg to shoot, I think, Shall We Dance?
Shall We Dance with Richard Gere and Jim Lowe. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think Winnipeg was playing Chicago in that, or one of these.
That's right. We got it because there was a union strike in Toronto, and so we got some Toronto leavings. But it took over the town. In a way.
Yeah. Anyway, so Susan Sarandon was there. She was there for like, I don't know, 2 months or something, and every day there was like a report about her activity and, you know, what did she think of the Winnipeg Zoo, and, you know, how did she feel when the mayor gave her the key to the city, and how does the TGI Fridays in Winnipeg compare to the one in Beverly Hills, and, you know, this kind of thing. And then after a few weeks of this, her earrings were stolen. Like, she had like some heirloom earrings, and they were stolen.
She had, what I was told, it was costume jewelry for the movie, and but it was still worth $40,000 or something like that.
Okay,
yeah.
Right. Anyway, so then
stolen out of her trailer.
Yeah, and then the next day on the cover of one of the newspapers, there was like a massive article, and it was like one of these you know, columnists saying, just when a real celebrity comes to Winnipeg and has a chance to see what we're really all about, someone has to ruin it for everybody, you know? Whoever stole Madame Sarandon's earrings better return them right away, or you will face the wrath of an angry city, you know? It's kind of like...
And we were all pretty ashamed.
And then 2 days later, they were found on a severed head, remember?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was... Noam had the inside story on that. The thief went back to the Royal Albert Hotel or whatever it was, and then picked up somebody, and then there was just so much excitement over the pickup and the theft of all this jewelry that things got carried away, and the body was chopped up into many pieces, and you know, it's just sort of excitement carried through to its logical but heinous extreme, and but then the perp made the short walk from the Royal Albert to the police station.
Right, turned
himself in.
Yeah. That's it. I mean, it's you know.
And the bloodied earrings and necklaces and things were returned.
They were returned, to the
carefully
Manitoba Film and Sound.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very grisly and horrible story, but at the same time, it's sort of, you know, Winnipeg just longing to be normal and be accepted in the mainstream, and having all of its pathologies just blow up in its face, you know?
Yeah.
Anyway, so to get back to the Oscar thing, that's where I come from.
Where do we go from here? I don't know. I guess I'll go back to the cue cards. So this is a record year for TIFF. We have 7 films that have ties to Manitoba, Winnipeg. We have 4 features and 3 shorts. Johnny Ma's Mother and the Bear, which I hear you have a cameo in.
I do have a cameo. My dog and I walk across the screen in it, and I give directions or something to the leading lady.
Amazing. We also have Ryan Cooper and Eva Thomas as Aberdeen, Rain Vermet's A Black Screen 2, Ian Bawa's The Best, Milos Mitrovic and Fabian Velasquez Serve the Country. what do we call the proliferation of Winnipeg films and filmmakers here at TIFF? Do we have like a tagline? A Winnipeg
Need
Renaissance?
to work on a name.
You got to work on a name, yeah.
Sort of nouvelle vague caliber label. Yeah, I don't have much.
Yeah, I like Rain. Rain Vermette, her Instagram handle is exovedat. It's this term from Louis Riel, which he named his followers as those who. It's like some strange neologism in Latin, which means those who have left the flock. And I like that Rain sort of identifies herself with that, and that's a very Winnipeg idea, I feel.
That's not bad. I think we got something there.
Yeah, I think we workshopped it. Okay.
Yeah.
So what do you think of the new crops that are coming in from Winnipeg and Manitoba over and over again? Do you have any words for any of them who are probably in this audience now?
I don't want them to miss out on any of the mistakes I made. I don't know. No, I haven't even seen half of them. I'm ashamed, but I'm going to catch up on them real soon because I'm a patriot, provincial patriot.
Provincial patriot.
And I hope it's a trend that continues. But who knows? It might be a quirky cyclical thing. But I have a hunch there's something going on that's great.
Yeah, I mean, what I really love about Winnipeg is it's got a real kind of anti-establishment bent. Like, despite the hallmark Christmas time veneer, there's this sort of roiling magma underneath the surface, and something really punk rock in Winnipeg that I think you can kind of trace to, from like Louis Riel to the 1919 General Strike to the Winnipeg Film Group to you, Guy. I mean, it's like it's a huge sort of countercultural edge in that city, which I really love. That's the Winnipeg that I love the most, and I think it's really beautiful to see young filmmakers, emerging filmmakers, really kind of taking that mantle.
Noam Gonic's first film, 1919, is one of my favorite films. It's really astonishing and just so packed with atmosphere, and it is just part of that continuum. Also, it really helps that Manitoba Film and Music, which is a bureaucracy, but it somehow perfectly complements that more street level ethos somehow. So it's a perfect relationship, and I'm extremely grateful to them all the time.
Great. And now I think we have the delight of taking audience questions. If any, oh wow, okay, you right there.
Despite that, that's the question I would love to hear your response to it. And also another regarding to the film, I want to hear your talk about your influence, what inspired the movie to just be made the way that it is.
Yeah, sure. That's great. Thank you for that. It's it's true. I mean, as far as the Oscar thing is concerned, I don't know how they make these decisions. I really don't. There's a lot of Iranian talent in the movie in every department on every level we created, and it's a movie that is kind of it's like a Venn diagram. The idea was to create this kind of Irano-Quebeco Winnipego brain. And that's the risk that we took. There's a real value to solitude. Like I live in Quebec now, which is kind of the world capital of solitude, and there's a real value to that. It really is. Like, I mean, I think the reason Quebec is one of the great cinematic cultures of the world is because Quebec has insisted on that solitude. It's been like, hey, we need to do our thing, and if only it's us that understand it, that's fine, and you can do your thing over there, and that's great. You can go do that over there, and that's great. And I think solitude is good. You know, I think there's a real value to that. You know, there's real community and solidarity, and you know, there's all manner of great Iranian Canadian filmmakers that we can name. The risk that we took was a risk of doing this together. That, you know, we were looking for a space of interfusion. It's an intercultural movie, and we made it together, and I think that there's a value to that too, you know, and I think that both can coexist. So that's my feeling about that. As far as the influences are concerned, of course, you know, we were inspired by all of the great Iranian masters, Abbas Kiarostami, Mohsen Makhmalbaf, Sohrab Shahid Saleh. And, you know, this was something that we channeled, and I went to Iran as a young filmmaker. I really wanted to study filmmaking there. And I went to kind of see if that was possible, and I kind of, you know, that became sort of a non-event. I just sort of walked into some walls and stuff. But I met a lot of really nice people, and really great, I made a lot of really great friends, and my life has had this sort of dialogue with Iran since that time. So this is a film that we really made Benami Dousti, if I may be so bold.
There's a question there.
Yeah, so I had the pleasure of seeing both of your films, and I think they're fantastic.
Thanks.
My question is about, you know, both of you have made films that are centered around real or fictionalized or fabricated Canadian political figures. And then you're also filmmakers, Canadian filmmakers whose films are seen more widely internationally than, you know, many Canadian filmmakers. I'm curious about, you know, there's a similarity in the tone, you know, this like flailing and failing for respect, a sort of self-deprecating humor. And I'm just interested about your relationship to, you know, what is your interest in Canadian history and you know, politics, and, you know, what do you think about the way that presents itself? I feel like it's so authentically Canadian. But I'm just curious what gravitates both of you to those things.
What drives you both to the self-deprecating Canadian history of it all?
Because Matthew gave such a great answer last time, I'll answer first. I guess in contradistinction to Quebec, where they're cool with their solitude, or even require it, I felt a need, a desperate need for Winnipeg to be out there in the world. And I wanted people to know about it, to feel it, without ever having to go to it. And even as a kid, I would daydream about movies being set in Winnipeg. I once had a fantasy that because I went to Expo 67 in Montreal, my big fantasy was that the next World's Fair would be in Winnipeg, you know, that sort of thing. I just wanted the world to recognize the home, and maybe by extension me, who knows, I don't know myself that well. But it does reek of desperation compared to the Quebecois attitude as described by Matthew. So I felt that the greatest mythologizing medium of the 20th century was film, that it reached people around the world and gave people a sense of what different places in the world were like. And we all sort of suspect, just like you suspect when someone's telling you a bedtime story, that it's a great story, but it's not true. I've always suspected that Hollywood has never felt an obligation to be true, but could still tell a great story. And I just thought, well, I've got a lot, you know, no one's mythologized Winnipeg in the first 100 years of cinema, so I got to start making up for 100 years of lost time, all in one movie, you know, that sort of thing. And so I was, I hope it doesn't seem like I'm trying too hard, but whatever it seems like, I started doing that with movies, and then culminating with my effort, my Winnipeg, I guess. But it was just part of a project to give people a sense of what the place was like without ever having to go there. Just like the way you might have a hunch about what Cleveland or Newark, New Jersey are like without ever having gone there. You just get the idea from hearing guests on The Tonight Show making quips about them or something like that, or having them make brief appearances in films. And, so I just wanted Winnipeg to be part of the great world mythology of place. And that doesn't answer the question about leaders. I don't know if I do leaders in Rumours. I do, obviously, but as well as Matthew fetishizes our mayors and premiers, and there's such a beautiful section in your movie. I don't want to spoil it for anyone who hasn't seen it, but there's that bus bench with Mayor Bill Norrie, who was the mayor, I guess, of your youth, or toddlerhood, even, for all I know. I can't remember.
Also.
Yes, and there's a beautiful little story about this bench which hasn't been touched in 40 years, and I don't know. It's the most beautiful. It could stand alone. I showed it. I was watching the movie, but I actually paused the movie and called my girlfriend into the room and made her watch that sequence, and she was like blown away by it as just a really beautiful piece of poetry. That would be a great clip. I don't know. Anyway, but it just features this mostly unloved mayor of Winnipeg, and I guess it would be like the equivalent here. Well, no, he wasn't like Rob Ford at all, but maybe on the love-o-meter he would sit around the same place. I'm not sure, but you've fetishized the Winnipeg mayor better than their mistresses ever could, or anything like that.
But I love Louis as Mayor Cornish in My Winnipeg Guy.
That's true. I have had Louis Negan play a mayor of Winnipeg. That's right. Yeah.
All right. Question right up there.
Filmmaker myself, very, very big fan. Just finished a postgraduate filmmaking program. We've seen My Winnipeg and wrote my thesis.
Oh, aren't you sweet? Thank you.
So I love experimental films. I feel like that's where I'm gravitating towards. Both of you being experimental. How far experimental is too far?
How far?
You alluded to it before, where you kind of bounce ideas off your partners or your teams. But when, for yourself, when you're like, okay,
How far How far is too far?
Oh, does the label experimental apply to me, or is that too far? Is that what you mean, or?
No, when you're in the process of creating your project and you want to do something new and fresh.
Yeah.
Do you ever question if this is too much for the audience, or?
We think of the audience all the time, but it's still most important that we are satisfied with it, that we like it, and that we can surprise each other, and then try to keep that surprise. Once you've surprised yourself once with an idea in a room, and it takes about 2 years to get onto the screen, so you have to remember what it was that surprised you and stuff. But and I guess you have to keep in mind just how alienating it would be, because I don't know, it would be fun to make a really irritating movie, but I don't know, your film casts such a spell and maintains it all the way through. I can't imagine you wanting to alienate anybody, and I don't think I want to alienate anyone, especially even in the movies I've made that alienated everybody, But experimental, I think, experimental films have been creating new frontiers all along that are eventually become accepted. Kenneth Anger movies became just the vocabulary of TV commercials eventually. It's just, so I don't know, we'd be lucky enough to be considered still experimental at this stage. But I know that didn't answer your question, but I'm learning from politicians to be asked one question and answer a completely different one.
At least you said something instead of saying nothing, like in Rumours.
Yeah, I haven't learned how to say nothing yet. I usually say too much, and then apologize to a bunch of people after.
We have time for one more question right here.
Hi, Matthew, you mentioned that you took a vow of poverty when you decided to come. This is a question for both of you. What do you think is the secret to longevity in the specifically Canadian film industry?
Ooh, that's a great question. What's the secret
I
to
have not taken a
longevity?
vow of poverty, but I somehow have managed to keep Matthew's vow of poverty. Longevity, in my case, it's because I've planned my career so poorly that this is the only thing I can do. people will say, "You're so courageous, you're so brave, you keep doing this." I'm like, "No, I can't do anything else. I have no marketable skills. I can't be hired for anything. I teach now and then, but, you know, what's your...
I don't know. I mean, it's a game of shells, isn't it, Guy? It's sort of, I think it's all about just sort of, the only thing I can think, there's sort of two things. One is to have like lots of projects kind of going all at once. It's kind of, well, if it's not time for that. I heard this apocryphal story about John Hughes going to Hollywood, and he had all of his scripts written.
Yeah.
And so he went to all these, you know, executives like, okay, you don't like 16 Candles, here's Pretty in Pink, try this, you know?
Yeah.
You don't like that, here's Ferris Bueller's Day Off, you know? So he just kind of played this game of shells until eventually he made everything. And I think that's, I unfortunately am not clairvoyant enough to do that, but,
Right.
You know, trying to move things around and also kind of, I don't know about you, Guy, but I've also just the amount of rejection involved in living an artistic life is one that I've kind of reached this point where I kind of don't feel any joy when things are successful, and I don't really feel bad if like the world has no interest in what I do. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, that's, I guess, a defense mechanism.
Yeah, I think
But
that's right.
what's inexplicable is how you can't feel good either, though.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, but maybe that's a Winnipeg thing. I'm not really sure.
No, I had a girlfriend that once pointed out, because I was never excited in a positive way or too depressed in a negative way, she actually felt, her father was a psychiatrist, she felt I had this really rare form of depression in which you just have no, in which your moods just level all the time.
It's like we've been neutered.
Yeah, and she didn't want to date a neutered person, so she wanted me to seek professional help. But I think I'm just a realist. I know that when the things are high, that there's always a reason that's sort of a little more grounding, that there's sort of a film festival frenzy that can take you too high if you aren't careful, and then all the better to send you into a graveyard spiral death plummet later. So I just quickly learned to just keep things sort of in the even and realistic, and it may not be good for my relationships, but it's been good for me.
I hope that inspires you.
Yes. Yeah. Live long and prosper.
On that note, the greatest note, thank you so much for being here, Guy, Matthew, and thank you so much for attending. Thank you.